is pole position for Morgan and Marcus Short in the Mosler. It'll be Morgan that starts the race. Morgan Short to start in car number 104, the black and red Mosler. Alongside on the front row, number 19, the Porsche of Sean Winder, who will start that. Sean Winder to start. Onto the second row. Let's just check whether that car's there. Yes, that's the car that had problems earlier on. Number 16, Nathan Wells in the BMW. Number 16 on row 2. That had engine problems in the run-up to the previous race. Was fixed, came out from a pit lane start, but then retired during the race. So hopefully that's all been fixed now. 16 and 36 alongside. Another of the BMWs we saw earlier got second place for Mark Smith to start, but this time he's sharing with Aaron Moulton-Smith. So Mark Smith to start 36. Row 3 is 21, Andrew Christopher's Ferrari, and 63, the Ginetta, which will be started by Paul Maxfield. Paul Maxfield to start. On to row 4, 127, which will be started by Patrick Charlton, and 10, John Cockerton. Row 5 is 15, which will be started by Thomas Cresswell, and 11, Peter Chalice. 15 and 11 on row 5. Row 6 is 12, Kevin Jones, and 86, Timothy Kresick. 12 and 86 on row 6. Row 7 is 147, David Fielder, and 71, Chris Murphy. 147 and 71 on row 7. Row 8 is 33, which will be started by one of the Alberts, but we haven't been told which. So Dale or Mark, we don't know which will start car number 33. 34 is Dave Griffin alongside. 33 and 34 on row 8. Row 9 is 51, David Harvey, and 73, which will be started by Jack Layton. Jack Layton to start 73. Row 10 is 9, Dylan Popovich, and 198, the familiar BMW, which I think Brian will start this one. Yes, he will. Brian Bransom to start 198. 9 and 198 on row 10. Row 11 is 18, Ashley Muldoon, and number 2, the Ginetta, which will be started by Harry Petch. Harry Petch to start number 2. Row 12 is 129, Tommy Grout, and 25, which will be started by Hassi Peto Diaz. 25, Hassi Peto Diaz starts. 129 and 25 on row 12. Row 13 is 161, Stefan Janssen, and 83, Sean Frey. 161 and 83. Penultimate row 14, 82 will be started by Ben Cater, and alongside 5, Andrew Rollison. And finally, a car which has, once again, I hope is here. I didn't have a chance to look out the back, but it's the Kevin Clark Simon Baker BMW, which was initially withdrawn. And this time, if they are here, and I hope they are, because they've just had a win, it will be Kevin Clark to start this time, car number 14. And that will start right at the back because it didn't do the qualifying session after those tyre problems we heard about from Kevin after the win. So we're around for the start, 40 minutes of racing. It's Mosler versus Porsche on the front row, and down into Redgate for the first time. And it is Morgan Short who leads into Redgate. The Porsche turns in second place, but there's a good battle for third between the BMW of Mark Smith and also the Ferrari of Andrew Christopher, joined in the commentary box by Martin Short. So we'll get a comment from him during the race. But Son Morgan out there in the lead at the moment, turning. In fact, the Ferrari's up into second place, so it got past the Porsche on the run down through the Craner curves. And in the lead is the Mosler of Morgan Short. Second place, the black Ferrari of Andrew Christopher. And in third place, the Porsche of Sean Winder, as they head round towards the highest point of the circuit, up at Coppice Corner. The Mosler turns into the right-hander, opening out a lead on the Ferrari as they come down the long exhibition straight into the chicane. Lights ablaze for the third-placed car. And off into the gravel goes the, is that the number 2?
That's Harry Petch.
Harry Petch, the number 2 Ginetta. as we've got the cars coming round to complete the first lap, and it is indeed the short Mosler that leads from the 21 Ferrari of Andrew Christopher, the 19 Sean Winder Porsche. Down into Redgate, fourth place is the second of the Porsches. That's the number 11 Peter Chalice car. Although, no, he's dropped down, so it's he must have Smith must have a transponder issue, because he came through but didn't appear. And I'm afraid the 16 BMW, we feared that that engine problem would recur, and he's in the pits on the first lap. So Nathan Wells from the second row, number 16, a retirement.
Yeah, definitely. Mark Smith is there. You can see him behind the Winder Porsche going through. And then it's the Aeropac car of Pete Chalice. And then John Cockerton with his ex-US racer Porsche. Yeah, you can see the BMW carving its way through the pack, and looking to see where it was. Clark and Baker were 12th at the end of the first lap. Clark and Baker 12th at the end of the first lap, so impressive start from them through the field.
Well, a huge lockup for Kevin Clark there, just talking about them. Massive lockup into the chicane on that occasion. Lots and lots of tyre smoke. I hope that hasn't flat spotted those tyres that they've been having problems with. It was tyres that put them out of qualifying this morning. And the two leaders down into the old hairpin, and Marcus has just brought up a note from the Classic Sports Car Club, who've asked us to mention they do send their thanks to the Short family and the Christopher family, who are first and second at the moment, who've both taken 20-second penalties, which are totally voluntary, just to give a bit of competition, because they are much quicker than the others. So those are the only two penalties actually that will apply in this race, because Nathan Wells is a retirement. From the CSCC, thanks to those two teams for taking those voluntary penalties.
I'm glad to see the number 12 Noble of Kevin Jones, that came in very smokily this morning, is out and running hard in the race, which is really cool. 2.6 seconds advantage for Morgan Short over Andrew Christopher. Third is now the Winder Porsche again, having got back past Mark Smith. John Cockerton is next up, ahead now of Peter Chalice. Two more Porsches, and then Jones in that number 12 and Noble.
Great battle going on there on the way down through the Craner curves, just behind Kevin Clark, who locks up again on the run into the old hairpin there. Ginetta versus Porsche versus Aston Martin. Great to see.
Wonder whether Kevin Clark's damaged a tyre or something, and therefore he doesn't have the full grip available. Here comes the Noble up behind the Porsches, designed by Lee Noble, a man who was originally behind the Ultima, wasn't he? That's
right. Yeah, we don't see many of those out racing these. The Ultima used to be quite popular in club racing.
Bob Light, he was the king of Ultimas, wasn't he?
That's right. Yes.
With the BF Goodrich car.
Yeah. Used a Renault engine, didn't they?
Oh, some of them on the road did, but he had a big Chevy in his, I think, what I remember.
Still this battle going on down into Redgate between third and fourth place, the Porsche versus the BMW, and it's the Porsche of Sean Winder that is leading Mark Smith in the BMW. That's numbers 19 and 36, just going down through the Craner curves now.
Yeah, Sean Winder's got Adam Wilcox co-driving that car, and did a bit of stuff with it last season, but not much this.
Had a big spin this morning coming out of the chicane in qualifying.
Massive spin.
Massive, yes. On power. We don't know who was in the car at the time, but got away with it. Didn't hit anything, as Mark Smith really starting to put the pressure on Sean Winder now as they go through McLean's up towards the top of the hill at Coppice. Turn right, double apex. Three-wheeling there, Mark Smith, as he just tips onto the curbing on the inside, trying to stay with the Porsche, maybe with the hope of outbraking into the chicane. Fastest lap just been improved upon by Morgan Short, 1:09.688. I think that's the first sub 1 minute 10 lap we've had this weekend, isn't it?
I think that's right, in terms of race conditions.
So
one or two pressures close to it. The best of the special saloons was in the 12s, wasn't it, yesterday? There's the Glebe Engineering Ginetta we saw there for a while, and here comes the Noble with Clark's BMW behind. They're now ahead of is that the car of Cockerton they've got through.
it's going to get tougher for Kevin Clark now, isn't it? Because he's each time he passes someone, the next car up is probably a little bit quicker. So places are harder and harder to make up as the Moseley goes through to complete lap 6, and a better time again, 1:09.546 now, so an improvement again that lap. And the Ferrari of Andrew Christopher now is 8.7 seconds behind, and then it's Sean Winder next up in that great battle with Mark Smith. In fact, Mark Smith went through just ahead on that occasion over the timing line. So Mark Smith back up into 3rd place. Sean Winder down into 4th.
And Jones closing on them in fact, Jones in the Noble, number 12, and 14, Clark, both closing rapidly. Clark even more so.
Absolutely, yes, a 1:11.9 for Clark last time around. That's a quick time in that BMW. So that's a 4-car, potentially a 4-car battle.
15 is the red Glebe Engineering Ginetta of the Cresswells, and that is now threatening Peter Challis. Some traffic on that lap for the leader, because the pace dropped a tad to the 1:12s, but the lead still more than 8 seconds, 8.2 seconds. And there's Kevin Clark closing in on the Kevin Jones. 2 Kevins battling into Redgate. They had a great little tussle behind them with several cars involved in that, and the Cresswell Ginetta up into 8th place.
We've got a message come up on the screen. Car 5, team manager to race control. We know not why, but that's the little Ford Ka.
Maybe the driver is the team manager.
Yeah, it could be a bit tricky, couldn't it? And that time around over the line, they're nearly back with us now. We'll have a look how they're going. But Mark Smith had opened out quite a gap on Sean Winder. And of course, Sean Winder is in turn being caught. There goes Mark Smith now. Yes, a good gap. And Winder is being caught by the Flying Noble of Kevin Jones and the Flying BMW of Kevin Clark.
Aston Martin in the middle of the pack, that's the Alberts in the 33.
Kevin Jones in the Noble has just done his best lap of the race, his personal best, a 1:11.8. So he's responding to the pressure from Kevin Clark behind, but that's pulling him closer to Sean Winder and indeed to Mark Smith as well. But we've got the added mix of Mark Smith handing over to Aaron Moulton-Smith, Sean Winder handing over to Adam Wilcox, and Kevin Clark handing over to Simon Baker. So there'll be a mix there of pace. We would expect perhaps Adam Wilcox to be, would we think, a little bit quicker.
Yes, I thought so. BRDC
Porsche.
member. And then we've got Kevin Jones down one side of one of the BMWs. And is he going to try to squeeze ahead round the outside at Redgate? No, there was more traffic to take care of. That looks like that's the Porsche, isn't it? The Cayman down there of Peto Diaz.
And Kevin Clark was at the back of that group of cars, looking for an opportunity, perhaps down through the Craner curves, to jump ahead. We'll see when they come back into our sight. In fact, he's right up behind the Noble as they go through Schwantz up into McLean's, and challenging as they come through McLean's, but he can't get through there. Now they're going uphill towards Coppice, and the Noble of Kevin Jones is closing right in on Sean Winder as well in the Porsche. So 3 of them coming down now onto the exhibition straight. Mark Smith, meanwhile, has pulled ahead, and the Noble of Jones has got through past Sean Winder's Porsche on braking for the chicane. If he can get it turned in, was a little bit wide on the exit, but the Noble goes up into 3rd place.
And here comes Clark on the left-hand side of Winder. They're absolutely wheel arch to wheel arch down there. Not a lot of room involved. Kevin Clark is going to try to outbrake the Porsche. They're side by side through the apex of Redgate, and out they go. And the BMW accelerates ahead, now chasing with clear view the Blue Noble there in the Craners of Kevin Jones, number 12. That was a body rubbing on the wheel arch rubbing on the tyre there of the BMW of Kevin Clark coming through the Craners. Tommy Grout's car in the pits.
And into the pits also, the pit window is open, so these are mandatory stops being done. It's Brian Bransom has come in the 198 BMW to hand over to Jasper Sapra, who took a 3rd place in the earlier race. So they're in for their stop. The 2 leaders have gone through. The gap 1st to 2nd between the Mosler and the Ferrari is 14.5 seconds. Fastest lap of the race still sits with Morgan Short, 1:09.546. But has eased his pace now to the mid-111s, which is still a little bit quicker than Andrew Christopher. Into the pits comes the Lotus, number 127. That's the Patrick Charlton started, handing over to Dan Webster.
Patrick Charlton's raced these since the Exige Challenge days, hasn't he? He's been in these cars. There's the Chopard car with all its, I think it's Daytona livery on it.
That's the Brian Bransom and Jasper Sapra BMW on our live stream screen as John Cockerton returns in the Chopard Porsche onto track.
Number 10, out he goes. Andrew Christopher is in from P2, 12 laps. Gap artificially goes out to 20.7 seconds because, of course, Christopher was slowing down to come in as he crossed the timing line and triggered the transponder.
And that battle continues. I think you mentioned this a few laps ago between the Porsche and the Ginetta. That's Chalice in the Porsche, number 11, and number 15, the Ginetta, which was started by Thomas Cresswell. That's not been in yet, so still Thomas at the wheel. And that's for Chalice in 7th, Cresswell's in 8th. "13 laps completed by the leader. Second place currently will be Smith. Yes, it is. Mark Smith goes through in 2nd because Andrew Christopher in the pit lane. The Noble of Kevin Jones goes through in third, and Kevin Clark in the BMW number 14 in fourth, as into the pits comes number 19, Sean Winder, to hand over to Adam Wilcox. Sean Winder's pit is way down the far end, so he trickles past and pulls up at his pit box, driving solo, so no change. Meantime, Andrew Christopher in the Ferrari still sitting in the pit lane with that extra voluntary 20-second delay. And coming up to 23 minutes remaining in this 40-minute race.
Pedro Diaz comes in to hand over to Colin Tester. That's the Porsche Cayman.
Well, the team manager of car number 104 stood behind me, and he says it's half and half between his two sons. So Morgan will hand over to Marcus at, I think, the next lap. Are they coming in there? Yeah, 1 or 2 laps, just to split the race equally between them. 22 minutes and a half, 22 and a half minutes remaining now. And the Ginetta Porsche battle that is for 5th place at the moment, with pit stops going on, is now in the hands of the Ginetta. So the number 15 Thomas Cresswell driven Ginetta has got past the number 11 Porsche of Peter Challis, moving it up into 5th. And then next pit stop is for number 18, which is one of the many BMWs. That's the black and red Ashley Muldoon BMW, which was running where in 18, 12th place. Followed closely by the Petch Ginetta, which had that dusty moment. Harry Petch will be handing over to Maxwell Petch, car number 2, the green Ginetta. And also in is the Noble as well. Kevin Jones, number 12 in the blue Noble, into the pit lane. That's from what was up in the top 5. Was actually running 3rd at the time it came into the pits. So we should see the Mosler actually not coming in this lap. So according to the team manager, it'll be the next lap then. He said it would be 1 or 2 more. So Morgan Short continues for 1 further lap in the leading Mosler, which car number 104, which has completed 16 laps.
The Pedro Diaz Tester car is not the one that is actually in my programmed list, but it's actually a 911 that Pedro Diaz has brought in. It's changed to 25, hasn't it? Pedro Diaz Contester Porsche 991 GT3 in that sort of sage green car. Oh, and there's contact there between one of the BMWs and a big bang for a backwards bang into the barrier for Peter Challis and the Arapac car. And unfortunately, that was on the way up to Coppice, and there was contact. Guessing that was the BMW involved. Didn't see the number, just saw the Porsche go across its nose and then actually leapt into the air and backed into the barrier, and unfortunately that's made a big mess of that.
We may well see a safety car out for that.
I think it's very likely.
Or a code 60.
And leader comes in. Leader comes in at 17 laps.
As expected.
Morgan Short then in to hand over to his younger brother. Morgan 20, Marcus 17. 560 horsepower.
What were you
37
doing
between them.
What were you driving when you were 17? Mine was
nothing.
Mine was a 1300cc Mark II Cortina.
I'm glad to say that Peter Challis is climbing out of the Porsche. The medics are there. Medics and rescue guys are there, guys and girls. And the safety car has gone out as anticipated.
If you're watching our live stream, this is the pit stop for the Mosler of brothers Morgan and Marcus Short, sons of Martin Short, of course, of Le Mans and many, many other GT and sports car races. Martin there in the headset, just helping to strap in Marcus. And they are taking, as did Andrew Christopher, an additional 20-second voluntary time penalty. But things have fallen their way anyway, because they've come in just as the safety car went out, which they obviously couldn't predict. They'd already planned to come in on that lap, as Martin told us a couple of minutes ago when he was up here. So things just fell their way. And the BMW that was involved in that incident with the Porsche, we'll try and identify from our timing screen. That could be the 147 of David Fielder. But Chalice has come up.
It's the one with it's the one with the express
forklift truck.
Forklifts down the side.
Yeah, so that's David Fielder then. Oh, and the Lotus has stopped. Oh, and red flag has gone out now. So I think with various issues around the circuit, that not least, obviously, Peter Chalice's accident, which is very unfortunate, but the Lotus has actually stopped in the pit lane entry, which is never a good thing. But we can see Peter Chalice there standing with the marshal, so that's the best news, that he's perfectly okay. Sadly, the car does not look perfectly okay. Car's being stopped on the grid. And the pit lane is closed, which means the Mosler is trapped in the pit lane. The Lotus being pushed in. Marcus, it's just an unfortunate place to break down in the pit lane entry, and it's